they were, injecting just a ridiculous amount of, synthetic chemicals into their body. And you really don't think that caused everything from heart disease to organ failure to cancer to, no, I mean, really?
Yeah, really.
Wow.
Yeah, back then, steroids were legal back then. I mean, they were on the training table.
Yeah, but heroin was legal. Heroin was legal and sold in Sears and Roebuck. I mean,
but I mean, they were taking steroids under doctor's supervision. Your body is naturally losing.
Bullshit. Those guys weren't taking steroids under a doctor's supervision.
Oh, yes, they were. Yes, they were. I knew the doctors.
Yeah, but okay, all right, okay.
I'll give you some books to read.
See again. So I knew I'd lose this debate.
This is the Alden Report.
I'm super excited about our latest program. Look, we've been on television for close to 20 years, literally selling hundreds of millions of dollars worth of products and services that have had a positive impact on people's lives. We've created millionaires. If you've ever watched television, you've most likely seen me on television, not dressed like this, but in a suit and a tie. Listen, we've re-engineered the process. We're allowing people, a small group of people, whether you're an author, whether you're a business coach, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you have a program or a service that you feel as though that can have a positive impact on people's lives, and you want to up-level your game. You're tired of what's going on social media. You're tired of AI is not kicking in. You're tired of all the money that you spent and you're not seeing any return. You're tired of all these fraudsters out there that tell you they're going to put you in Huffington Post or USA Today or Forbes, and it's nothing just but a joke. You want to be in front of millions of people every single day all over the country. Folks, we've been doing it for 20 years. We've re-engineered the process. We've made it possible for the average everyday person to participate in this. If you want to up-level your game, if you truly want to build your profile, if you truly want to get in front of millions of people every single day, send me a direct message at Mike Alden. See it on the bottom of the screen. At Mike Alden, put TV in the message, and I will get back to you personally and see if you're a good fit for us. Again, send me a direct message at Mike Alden. Send me the message TV, and we'll see if you're a good fit.
This is the Alden Report.
All right. Well, my name is Mike Alden. We are here in Blue Bay Studios. Almost pulled my microphone off the stand. That's okay. I got my 99-cent glasses, and I'm rocking the shirt that, from a visual standpoint for cameras, it might be a little wacky, but I really don't care because it's an XL, and I haven't worn an XL in I don't know how long. I'm super excited for my next guest. My next guest is literally, I don't know if he calls himself this, but he is one of the pioneers in the entire fitness industry. And that's a pretty broad statement. It's a pretty big thing to say, but he is also one of the founders of the iconic Gold's Gym. He's also the author of the book, The Three Muscleteers, the story of Gold's Gym, the birth of an industry, and how fitness culture was reshaped worldwide. There it is. He's holding it up right now. His name is Ed Connors. Ed, thanks so much for being here, man. I'm excited to have you on.
It's good to be here, Mike. Thank you.
So we met, I don't know, about 6 months ago through a friend of mine, Greg Como, who is, he's a bodybuilder, competed in a bunch of shows. Really kind of been in and around that industry. He's worked with some of the, biggest celebrities in the world and training them and things like that. And he introduced me to you and your book, and I was just blown away by one, like what you've done in the industry. And then now that I know you, because we've talked, offline before, I didn't realize kind of like, how big of a deal you really are, man. Like you really are an icon in what is now an industry that who knows, like, I don't know that you would have seen it when you started, 30, 40 years ago. But you're like the guy, tell us about, like, how did you get involved in the whole fitness industry? Because you're also an architect. We'll talk a little bit about that, but what was the beginnings of you getting involved in the fitness industry?
I was a fat kid growing up in Omaha, Nebraska, And I knew I was going to be, I went off to Berkeley, UC Berkeley to school, and I knew I was going to be drafted for Vietnam. So I joined a gym to lose weight. I was 250 pounds at 5'11". And so that was my first experience with, joining what was back then a Jack LaLanne European health spa. And it was a bad experience. And I think in the back of my mind, I must have thought if ever I had a chance to change this, I would. And ironically, or several years later, I was able to do that I opened up the first gym franchise in America 43 years ago.
And that was what gym?
Gold's Gym.
And that gym still stands today, right? I mean, there's still Gold's gyms all over the world still, right? I mean, it's not as big as what it used to be, but they still exist, right?
Well, actually, there are more gyms overseas now than there are in the U.S. There are 680 Gold's gyms worldwide. 400 of them are overseas. We have over 100 in Japan, over 100 in India right now. So I didn't start Gold's Gym. That was Joe Gold in 1965, but my two partners and I bought it in 1979. And a year and a half after we bought it, I opened up the first franchise. It was called a license at the time, but it was the first franchise licensed gym in America.
And when I watch like documentaries like Pumping Iron, and I think of like Venice Beach and kind of the origins of like Arnold and Ferrigno and some of these guys that I know. I don't know a ton of guys in the bodybuilding space, but those guys, that people, I think a lot of, everybody knows Arnold, but those guys were training at Gold's Gym, right? That was like their mecca, right?
Well, that's how different the world was back then. Arnold Schwarzenegger 50 years ago had to go from Graz, Austria to Venice, California to get a workout. Now there are gyms, every mile in urban America, there are probably a half dozen choices, at least before the pandemic. So yeah, it was a completely different world. I mean, that movie, I contend, Pumping Iron and Weider and Gold's Gym transformed fitness in America. We made it popular. It became a thing. We changed the culture, really.
I think too, when people think of, when I was a kid, I used to work out at a World's Gym here. I don't know the history between the two. Maybe we can get into that, but I remember, working out at a World's Gym versus working out at like a health club here in my town is it's a cultural, just the disparity is it's just night and day. World's Gym, you had, bodybuilders, you had power lifters, there were, I've learned this term, there were guys running gear, which means they were doing steroids and stuff. But it was just a different environment. And I gotta be honest, it was kind of a scary environment early on for you in kind of growing out the Gold's franchise. Was it hard and difficult to because fitness today is a lot different than it was then? Was it hard to get average normal people into a Gold's Gym, even because of that documentary? Because when you watch that documentary, you just see jacked up dudes lifting tons of weight, half naked, and but you didn't see just normal, average, everyday people, working out. Was it hard to market that, I guess, is what I'm getting at?
That was somewhat of a challenge. We were, you could be intimidated or you could be inspired walking in a Gold's Gym. I think the Gold's Gym Venice was amazing because it became such a family that I think people always, no matter where they were coming from, they felt comfortable in that environment. I mean, we had a lot of celebrities training at the gym, mixing with hardcore bodybuilders, big guys, and but we were always conscious of that stigma, and we did everything we could to include more people, including we basically women. We had the first women's bodybuilding contest back in 1979. And we brought aerobics into the gym when it was failing to stand by itself alone. Jane Fonda was a member of our gym. She had a trainer, but she pioneered women's aerobics. and we brought it into the gyms. And we also brought bikes. When I bought Gold's Gym with my two partners, there wasn't one bike in the gym. Cardio was non-existent. So we brought that into the gym, and we tried to be on top of where it was going and recognize the new trends to get more people involved.
A lot of people, they hear the word visionary, and I think some people, anybody who calls themselves a visionary, unless they're someone like you, I think are assholes. But you truly are a visionary. You've seen trends, and even now you're seeing trends. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of what you're doing and your journey now, even years later, in trying to and you are changing even the current fitness industry today. But back then, when you introduced cardio into the gym, was that like a big deal? Were people like, did they see these? See, and the reason why I asked that question too is because, like, I remember being at the gym. I mean, I'm 47, so I mean, I didn't start really hitting gyms until like the like late 80s. And I do remember seeing like new equipment coming into the gym and just staring at it and like not knowing what to do with it. But if there was no cardio in your gyms ever, and then all of a sudden you introduce bikes, how do you get people to do it? Because I don't know, do they feel different? Like, how does that work?
Well, I think people saw big guys riding bikes in the gym, and they thought, well, this is something that we should investigate. And initially, we put the bikes on top of the maintenance shed in the first room of Gold's Gym Venice, along with bikes on top of the restrooms in the room, so that people could look down and sort of be entertained. I mean, this was before bikes had TVs in front of them. This was the gym was entertainment. And so I think the way we placed them actually was fortuitous, because I think people would then go there to ride a bike and they would look down at what was going on the gym floor. And I think they would learn a lot about how to use various pieces of equipment. We pioneered a lot of equipment lines. We would invite equipment companies into our gym to try out their equipment. If we liked it, we kept it. If we didn't like it, we sent it back. So that was a time, the 80s were the beginning of major equipment companies, and they were on the forefront of new ways to exercise and get results.
Again, we're on with Ed Connors, truly a visionary and a pioneer in the fitness industry, not only here in the United States, but worldwide. He's also the author of the best-selling book, The Three Muscleteers, the story of Gold's Gym, the birth of an industry, and how fitness culture was reshaped worldwide. And by the way, the foreword to the book is written by a guy that you may know. I think most people know, John Cena. We're going to talk a little bit about how that happened and Ed's role in the trajectory of John Cena, which, by the way, I played football with at Springfield College. So if you'd like some more information about Ed, you can just go to his website, which is edconnors.com, where you can pick up his book. You can also pick up his book wherever books are available. But if you're in the fitness world, if you're thinking about getting fit, which you should, or if you're just interested in history and how one man, not just the only guy, but how he had an impact on an entire industry that is $1 trillion industry worldwide. This guy was there from the very, very beginning. The story is super interesting. All of the big names that you have heard of, I'll use Arnold Schwarzenegger because everybody knows, and John Cena. Ed Connors is the guy that was behind it or in front of it and knows all these people as well. So go to edconnors.com. It's Ed, Connors. So let's talk about some of the celebrities. You mentioned Jane Fonda. Everybody knows Jane Fonda. I talk about Arnold. So when you're there in the early days, Venice Beach, because that's where you mainly were, right? I mean, I know Gold's was everywhere. That was like your main kind of headquarters.
I spent half my life in Venice Beach. Yeah, so everyone calls it Venice. I think only out-of-staters call it Venice Beach. But
okay, well, I'm out-of-stater. All right, Venice. Excuse me. I've been to Venice, Italy, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And by the way, just on a side note, I tried to do the outside of Venice Beach or Venice, the Gold's Gym there, they have those what are those? They're like almost like swing sets. What are those things they hold up? The rings, right? And I see where you see the guys doing that. You don't realize how strong you actually have to be to do that.
Right.
I almost tore my shoulder out trying to do that. But so early on, you get Jane Fonda, who was a celebrity then. Arnold was certainly a celebrity then. But people walking through the doors, like talk about some of the other people that maybe average everyday people would know, like Franco Colombo or some of these other people that just walk through the door of your gym, and what your first impression was in some of your interactions, because it's super interesting.
We had a lot of celebrities. Well, celebrity training all started with Jake Steinfeld, Body by Jake, who was working at the Universal Studios in Universal City in the Valley in L.A. Stars would come up to him and say, how do you look like that? How do you get like that? What do you do? And he would invite them down to the Gold's Gym to train. So that was when personal training was born. This is in the early 1980s. Ted Turner, who was starting CNN back then, gave him a show called Body by Jake on his network, which really jump-started his career. But I think a lot of people then got into personal training. People would say there's no money in bodybuilding, and there's not a lot and it's for a very limited few. But there are now tens of thousands of men and women all over America doing personal training. So obviously, people looking at some of these bodies in the gym, they would say, well, my God, if you can do that to your body, what could you do to mine? So I think having a great physique was a way of, basically marketing yourself, getting attention. Jimmy Kahn was probably one of my favorite members. He had a personal trainer, Rick Valeni, who was a house guest of mine. And but all the actors were great. Jimmy Kahn just died. Ray Liotta was a regular. Keanu Reeves, Marky Mark, Mark Wahlberg, Matt Damon. All the celebrities were nice. I think if you can't be a great celebrity in Hollywood if you're a jerk, or
you hear about places like Gold's where celebrities will come in. I think even today, but when someone like James Caan walks in, you call him Jimmy, walks into the gym at that time, and at that time was probably, if I had to guess, was he probably, I don't know, but it's kind of like the peak of his career, like when he was like a mega star. He walks into the gym. How is he treated? Is everybody mobbing him, or are they staring at him? There was no camera phone, so no one's really taking pictures. Right. Are they going up to him, or are they just letting him do his thing?
We were lucky. In fact, that all the years that I was one of the owners, there were no camera phones. That would be a nightmare to deal with. But I think that's what people really appreciate about Gold's Gym. I guess because you're in L.A., there's more respect for people's space. And I don't remember any complaints from celebrities of being bothered. But I think they knew we gave all of them comp membership. So I think they understood that in exchange for a free membership, they perhaps would have to give some time to people who came up and pestered them for an autograph or a photo. And most of them actually love that. They like being recognized, and as long as you're not really intruding in whatever they're doing, I don't remember one problem. And some of them, I didn't watch a lot of TV or know maybe the music scene, but I didn't even recognize half of them myself. But our front desk people would, and they would call me up, or one of the managers, and say so and so's in the gym, 50 cents in the gym. Someone once told me, "Well, there's 50 cents," and I thought there was some money on the floor. That's how. Yeah, pick it up. But our front desk staff was great, and they would signal, get these people, and we'd give them a membership. We gave away about $80,000 a month in free memberships and clothes, and that was our way of it was kind of our way of being influencers, or getting influencers back in the day when there was no social media. Yeah, the magazines made Gold's Gym, and my house guests contributed to that. If I could get if I could get people wearing our clothes, being shot in our gym, and then published for free in the magazines, that was golden. There was you couldn't take a photo in Gold's Gym without seeing the logo and the name in the background.
That was going to be my next question. You're not only a great businessman. Again, you're an architect as well. We'll talk about that a little bit. But you're a great marketer, but I don't really know what impact. I mean, you just kind of touch upon it, but how important to you was the apparel and the logo itself? Because it wasn't just I have the vision of the classic kind of tank where it's just really thin in the back, and so it's almost like you're wearing nothing, and it says
Right.
gold in the front. And I had one of those, when I was a kid. I probably shouldn't have worn it because I was probably it wasn't, I don't know, but I had one, and it was and this is okay. So not that long ago. How important was the branding of the name Gold's Gym on other stuff? And could you also directly attribute the growth of the logo and its apparel line to the growth of the gym itself?
Undoubtedly, more people have worn Gold's Gym clothing than have trained in the gym. So the clothing was huge. In fact, I write in my book that by the end of the 1980s, we were really a clothing company masquerading as a gym chain. And as you mentioned, the tank tops were huge, t-shirts and sweats, but we had some real winners there. We had, we would see trends on Venice Beach, and like baggy pants or fanny packs or cotton lycra shorts, and those became real successes for us and boosted our sales. In fact, I think the biggest mistake we ever made was to license it out, because nobody did it better than ourselves. Unfortunately, we outgrew our lines of credit with the bank, and we also back then there was really a shortage of T-shirts. Everything was U.S. made, pretty much in the Southeast. There wasn't all the overseas production. There weren't a lot of major brands like there are now. It's just totally glutted. But no, it was key to our success.
So
people wearing the shirt.
From a revenue standpoint, before you guys license it out, where did that stand as far as the revenue and the clothing line versus the gyms themselves? Was it close, or was it?
No, it wasn't even close. No, the clothing was. The clothing was huge. I mean, we would buy a T-shirt screen for $225, sell it to our gym owners for $450, and they would sell it for $995. So Keystone, everybody made money.
So you're saying, so just so we're clear, so the clothing and the apparel was
Right.
bigger than the actual gym business itself.
Right. For us, it was, yes.
So competitors, the next one that comes to mind is World's Gym. I don't know the timing of World's. It was World's first before Gold's, but to me, it reminds me of Burger King and McDonald's. You would have not exactly the same, but you'd have kind of two similar cultures or two similar concepts. Did Gold's have a real impact? Did World's have a real impact on Gold's?
Well, the fact that you're saying World's Gym and not World Gym shows you how people would confuse the two. Joe Gold started Gold's Gym in 1965, but then he sold it in 1970. He was only an owner for 5 years. He was a merchant seaman, a Korean War veteran. He went out to the sea again and then came back and regretted having sold his business and his name. So he opened up World Gym. And Arnold had trained at the original Gold's Gym that he started and had fond memories. That's the one you see in Pumping Iron. So Joe came up with the name World Gym when he had a gorilla on their logo rather than the bald-headed man. So Arnold was very loyal to Joe Gold and trained there all the time. He would still occasionally go to Gold's Gym, but he wanted to go back to his roots. Arnold was, I would say, very loyal and that's where Franco Colombo and others from the movie Pumping Iron would train. But when he died in 04, he had 600 members. We had 12,000. So it was a whole different setup. His gym was more like a private club. Ours was for everybody. I mean, our motto was serious fitness for everybody.
Thanks for embarrassing me, Ed. You know, you're the first guy that's ever embarrassed me. But yeah, I've always, Mark, didn't you always consider it Worlds, Mark? I always thought it was with an S.
You're not alone. Everybody says World's Gym.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I'm not the only one. Okay, good. All right, okay, because
that just shows you how. I mean, people would swear to me they'd been in a Gold's Gym, and in fact, I would have to prove them no, they'd gone to a World's Gym. But our models were very similar. In fact, they copied. I don't think Joe could have had such a tight, clubbish atmosphere in Venice if he hadn't copied our franchise program. So they had several hundred World Gym franchises, which allowed him to basically not worry about membership in his facility in L.A.
So I have a ton of questions for you about it. I've been working out, pretty much my whole life, and have been to a lot of different gyms and seen the evolution of a lot of the gyms. And I want to talk to you about the business of the gyms in just a moment. Again, we've been on with Ed Connors. Ed is a visionary. He in fact is. I don't know if he says it about himself. He probably doesn't, because he's a humble guy. He is a pioneer in the fitness industry. He's also the author of the 3 Muscle Tiers, the story of Gold's Gym. It's also the foreword was written by John Cena, which we'll get into as well. But this isn't necessarily just a book about the gym industry and the fitness industry. It's a book about building a brand, building a massive brand, building a worldwide brand, and how it's done. If you're interested in growing a brand, if you want to learn about what a guy like Ed and his partners have done, go to edconnors.com. You can pick up the book there. You could also just pick up the book wherever books are available. The story is interesting, and by the way, he's still active in this space. I think you were just Arnold Classic or Olympia. I mean, you were definitely there somewhere, and this guy's still out there doing it. He continues to do it years later. We're going to talk about what he's doing now as well in this space. So the model itself, right? There's I mean, I don't know that it's changed too much as far as like the financial side of it, but generally you have a monthly membership. Then also you have the people, then you could that some of these gyms did the lifetime membership, and I think that was a colossal failure for most of them. Then you could have quarterly and things like that. So that part I kind of get. I think most people do. But what I've been told is the juice bar, right? The protein stuff. Talk about that. How important was that? Was there big margins there? Were people making a lot of money there, or was that just a waste of time?
I never saw anyone making money in a juice bar. I didn't have them in any. I was involved in 37 separate Gold's Gym franchises in 7 states, and we didn't have a juice bar. Well, my one in Portland tried selling coffee, but that couldn't work. I mean, we're not. We couldn't be Starbucks, I think, because we didn't have the constant traffic flow. So I'm totally. I would not recommend putting a juice bar in a gym.
By the way, for those of you who are watching, I'm actually eating right now. I've never done this before. The reason why I'm eating, because I'm eating 97% lean beef. I even told Ed what I'm doing. But I'm on a bit of a fitness journey myself at 47 years old, having worked out my whole life. So I'm on a schedule. I got to eat. So Ed doesn't mind because he's been dealing with this his whole life. Okay, the reason why I was also asking about the juice bar is the other part of it, of what was in the juice bars, and I'm using juice as in real juice, not the juice that the guys are using to grow their muscles, but the supplement industry and the kind of the proliferation of that early on. Tell me a little bit about that and what that was like for guys, because now you can go to a convenience store and you can get muscle milk, everywhere. But back then, there weren't GNCs, there weren't stores like that. Really, the only place that I'm aware of, I think you could even buy that stuff would be a gym. So were you guys selling supplements? Were you selling protein? Was that a part of your business? And if the answer is no, that's fine. But talk about the impact that the supplement industry had on the fitness industry.
Well, that was one of the biggest changes I've seen over the years. Back in the day, Joe Weider's products were probably the biggest line, and of course he used his magazines to promote them. But back then, people need to understand that what was on the label necessarily wasn't what was in the can. It didn't mix well, and it didn't taste well. So it was a whole different world. Now there's incredible stuff over the counter you can get at supplement stores. So no, it's that's changed tremendously in the past 45 years.
And did you ever get involved in that industry at all? In your
we did, and we licensed that out too, like the clothing, which was probably another mistake. But we did get involved in it. But again, getting production was difficult in those early days. We were kind of always ahead of the curve. I think had the production sources been better, we would not have gotten out of that business. But getting product was not easy. The supply lines weren't as good. Again, it was a whole new area. I mean, there were no healthy health bars. That was non-existent. We actually pioneered having egg whites for sale in the gym. That was the one food product that we started with. But no, I had 20 some house guests who started supplement companies, probably did $1 billion last year. So it takes, I think, somebody passionate, knowing what they're doing about the product. And there are a lot of good fitness people today involved in that it's their particular insight and passion that makes it work. We didn't have that. We were too corporate, I think, by then.
Now, you mentioned Joe Weider. I believe he was the one that brought Arnold here from Austria. Joe Weider was he kind of like the first guy that really made supplements big and nutrition big? And
I would say in my book, I more or less say that Joe Weider, Arnold, and Gold's Gym changed the culture, and I do believe that. I mean, his magazines influenced millions around the world, and of course they had so much advertising in them, mainly for supplements, that they were considered at one point by the Postal Service to be not a legitimate magazine, but an advertising flyer. So he actually had to increase the content in his magazines. But no, I would stand in the lobby at Gold's Gym Venice sometimes and ask people why were they coming to our gym, and the answer, the majority was a Joe Weider magazine. They had seen someone on a cover or opened the magazine and read an article and got interested, and they were visiting Southern California and they wanted to see Gold's Gym. We were a big tourist attraction.
So the evolution of the actual training itself in the gym, when people look at pumping iron, you see barbells, dumbbells, and right. You have like the early stages of like the universal machine where you're doing lat pull downs and stuff like that. But that was pretty much it. There wasn't really right. anything there. What was right. like the first, you had mentioned, companies would test some of their products over there, but what was like the first breakthrough, line of machines or what have you, that you were like, whoa, this is different, this is changing things, and we're going to put these in our gym? Was there one in particular? Like I think of like Nautilus or I don't know.
I would credit Nautilus as being a pioneer, sure. Mm-hmm. But actually Joe Gold and George Fipasic, a friend of his, built the equipment for the original Gold's Gym that you see in pumping iron. And I bought some of that for my first franchise in San Francisco. But there were only Carrion and Flex were two other companies that were new back then. But Nautilus was definitely a pioneer, and they're still in the gyms. I mean, they're still around. That was Arthur Jones out of Florida.
And okay, so let's jump ahead. I get that. Well, we'll jump around a little bit, but now, in the gyms, you have the Nautilus machines, you have hammer strength, you have all these different. You have now this kettlebells are everywhere, all this other stuff. Other than Nautilus, and then now also you have this whole CrossFit industry. Everything seems to be changing. I don't think you like the CrossFit industry, because you and I think talked about this a little bit. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is I see all these different things, and I see all these different fads and trends. Like, what is one thing that, since the beginning of time, since you've been in the industry, that has remained the same and will always remain the same?
I think walking, walking is great.
That's it.
I mean, that's certainly a one constant. I mean, if you can walk 10,000 steps a day, I mean, you're doing your body a lot of good. I think especially now with people sitting so much, when I was writing my book, I spent probably 8 hours a day for a year, but I would go out walking for 4 hours to try and get 10,000 steps in, at least, maybe 20. So that actually probably relieved my potential back pain by that combination. So if you can't do anything else, just at least walk. And of course, nowadays in a lot of cities you can't walk easily, or the weather. I'm in Texas right now, where they've had 5 months of 100-degree heat. So then you join a gym and start with the treadmill, or then moved on to the one of the other machines. But I would encourage people, and that's why I don't like CrossFit. It's intimidating. People get hurt. It's a boon for chiropractors. Just start. Don't just jump into a gym with and start lifting weights. Start walking.
Let's talk a little bit about the dark side of the bodybuilding world. Steroids, right? So
I don't call them so dark in my book. I really believe, I mean, they are the fountain of youth for many. And I write in my book that after now 45 years around this, I don't know anyone who I could legitimately honestly say was hurt taking steroids. And it's the other things that we all know about that people die from. The fentanyl right now is a huge killer, because it's laced.
What about that guy there, the football player for the Raiders?
Lyle Ozato?
Yeah.
I believe he died from AIDS.
Oh, that makes sense. I mean, he was shooting needles, right?
Well, I grew up in, my first gym in San Francisco happened to be the dawn of AIDS in America. And what about the more recent one, Rich Pena? Well, Rich probably died from, some form of synthol poisoning.
But you don't think that he just overdid it and just fucking just juiced himself up so much that he ultimately just caused organ failure?
I don't think there's so many reasons why he might have died. I don't think we really know, but he lived life. I mean, he died, I think, around 46 years old, your age. But I think so many people in America or the world, they'll die never having lived. That won't be Rich Piana. God bless him. I mean, he inspired a lot of people, like Ultimate Warrior. He died in his 50s. Was it steroids or was it his lifestyle? But I mean, his grandfather and his father died in their 50s. So I would call it genetics.
Well, okay. We're gonna have a little debate here, I think. So, and I'll probably lose because you know it better than me. But so okay. Back then, I'm pretty sure this didn't exist. So back then, there wasn't HRT, hormone replacement therapy. There wasn't TRT, where you can go to a doctor, and whether that's good or bad, I'm not really sure. Because most doctors still, but you could go under the care of a doctor, and you can get. Because I did it 10 years ago. I think I told you I was 38. My testosterone was at like 204, and I just felt horrible. I went to a doctor. Was on it for 6 months. And I didn't get jacked and big or anything like that. but it was done in a way that was basically just to get my testosterone to a point where I was essentially a man again, right? But then you have the guys that were in fact at Gold's Gym and World Gym and all these other gyms where they were, injecting just a ridiculous amount of, synthetic chemicals into their body. And you really don't think that caused everything from heart disease to organ failure to cancer to, no, I mean, really?
Yeah, really.
Wow.
Yeah, back then, steroids were legal back then. I mean, they were on the training table.
Yeah, but heroin was legal. Heroin was legal and sold in Sears and Roebuck. I mean,
but I mean, they were taking steroids under doctor's supervision. Your body is naturally losing.
Bullshit. Those guys weren't taking steroids under a doctor's supervision.
Oh, yes, they were. I knew the doctors.
Yeah, but okay, all right, okay.
I'll give you some books to read.
See again. So I knew I'd lose this debate, but all right. So,
no, I mean, it has gotten out of hand nowadays.
You think it's got out of hand now, or was it out of hand then?
It was not out of hand then. No.
Well, because all right, so it was legal. Okay, so if it was legal then, because I don't know, because I wasn't even alive. Right. I was 75. But where were people getting the steroids?
Well, it was legal.
I know, but where were they getting it? I know where. So back in the 70s or 80, I don't know when they became illegal. Where would you go and buy steroids? You just go to the pharmacy?
No, you'd have to go. You could go to a pharmacy in Tijuana. You could go to Mexico and get steroids down there if you didn't want to see a doctor. But there were doctors in L.A. who would prescribe steroids. Sure.
Man, I don't know. I think that's by the way, this is going to be the highlight reel because we do a highlight reel of this. I think we go back. Like, I don't disagree with what you kind of said as far as it being, the fountain of youth. I know that, growth hormone is definitely that too. Okay, so let me ask you this question.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I'm 18 years old. I have a shot at playing D1.
Right.
But I know everyone else is going to do Winstrol. They're going to do Anadrol. They're going to do all these other things. What should I do?
Well, first off, I would say that any teenager who's contemplating taking steroids should wait until at least they're 21 or 22. I mean, you've got to let your own natural, your body produce naturally and get to that point. Your body stops growing at 21 or 22. So don't do anything before that time. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of guys do, but no, that would be my recommendation. Don't start until later. And
so
then
I'm looking at your backdrop, right? And for those watching, and there's a bunch of guys, all of course, with the Gold's Gym attire on there. And if I had to guess, I'd say 90% of them were doing steroids. Is that accurate?
I would say yes. Yeah.
Okay. And so if of those people that are behind there today, you're what you're saying is what you've said is that you're not aware of those guys or gals that had any sort of complications and died as a result of the steroid use. You think it was something else?
I can't honestly say that any one of them or the 535 house guests I've had, and 60 some have died. I can't honestly say that steroids caused their death. In fact, the majority of the people I know that died, they died in car wrecks. I mean,
do you think?
Yeah.
Okay, what are your? I know that you don't spend a ton of time on this on your book, but I think it's just interesting because, when you think about baseball, and Mark McGwire and Barry Bonds, and that was such a big deal. What are your thoughts on PEDs, performance enhancing drugs, in professional sports? Should we just legalize them? Should we legalize them to a certain degree? Should we regulate them? What are your thoughts on this? And then my next question is did you do steroids? And if you did, what was your experience?
I've never done steroids because, again, I don't have the genetics to be a great bodybuilder. I know I don't have it. Mm-hmm. I can see it in others, but I've never touched steroids. I think I've got good. I mean, I'm 78 years old. My dad just died at 96. Again, so much is genetics. But no,
But what are your thoughts on it as it relates to professional sports, or even like the higher level, like D1 sports? Because let me tell you my opinion before you take. I played Division II football, and with John Cena, I mean, I don't know this as a fact, so it's just my opinion. But I would say 80% of my team was doing some sort of steroids, and I wasn't. I was just a big, strong kid. Period. But what I did notice, and what frustrated me, was I could not compete with those kids. They're bigger, faster, stronger. It's not natural. And in my opinion, in that scenario, I think it would be considered cheating, so to speak. But same time, I don't disagree with kids or guys, men and or women now, that have a shot of going D1 and then becoming a professional athlete. Like I get that in a way. I get that risk. So what are your thoughts? Do you have an opinion on performance-enhancing drugs?
I disagree with women taking things that are not natural for females. For the men.
Why?
Because it turns them into freaks. It makes them
hold on a second. So Flex Wheeler or Ronnie Coleman or these guys are like, they're not freaks on stage, you know what I mean? Your body naturally cannot be 330 pounds with 4% body fat. That's a freak.
Yeah, but for a woman, it's being a freak. For a man, it's taking it to an extreme. And they become freaks. I mean, that's why I don't like the current state of bodybuilding, because it's too freakish.
Yeah.
Regular people, I want to see people on stage who people can look at and say, boy, that's incredible. I'd love to look like that, or at least, get healthier or better looking. It's so much about self-esteem. I mean, that's the business we're in the people business, and people want to feel better about how they look. And America's, one of the most obese countries in the world. We've got a real major problem. So if these people can be role models to get people, working out or moving, so be it. But no, I can't really say that I can't say that it's good to have, let's steroids loose in all sports activities. I mean, that's a philosophical discussion that I don't think I'm qualified to. Really...
Hold on. I think you're totally qualified, but we don't have all day. But I just think it's interesting because not only we're talking about steroids, but the evolution of the fitness industry, in addition to the training methodologies. And the supplementation and how people eat and how people, like, again, as I'm talking to you, I'm eating because I'm on a schedule. I'm trying to be, trying to follow a certain regimen. I just think the whole thing is interesting in the science behind it. Again, we've been on with Ed Connors. We went down a little bit of a rabbit hole with him. He probably didn't expect it. We're talking about steroids and things like that. But this guy is literally, he was there at the beginning of an industry that's a multi-trillion-dollar industry that has affected people worldwide, that has changed people's lives worldwide. He is responsible, we're going to get into that next, for finding guys like John Cena. In fact, John Cena wrote the foreword to his book, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a spoiler alert, but at the end of that foreword, it said, if it wasn't for Ed Connors, there would not be John Cena. So if you'd like some more information about Ed, if you want to learn about the fitness industry, where it's been, where it's going, and also what he's doing, and also if you want to learn about growing a brand, a worldwide brand, and how to do it, and also the peaks and valleys and all the things that happens in between and all the characters as well, then go to edconnors.com. You can pick up his book, the Three Musketeers. It's also available where books are sold. I don't know that we've really had anybody that has had an impact on an industry as much as Ed has. And I'll just tell you this, Ed, I was, so I'm training with a guy. So I didn't tell you this, we haven't talked in a little while, but I decided at 47 that I'm going to compete in a men's physique show. And I was training I got a coach now locally who's competed in Mr. Olympia. He's a PhD actually in physical therapy. And I said, "Hey, do you know Ed Connors?" He's like, "Of course, I know Ed Connors." And everybody that I know that's in this space knows exactly who you are. And there's a reason. There's a reason for that because of your impact on it, and you've had such a great impact on people. So, uh, you know, the state of the industry now, and where it is. What are your thoughts on the state of the industry, and what are you doing now that you believe is going to have a larger impact on the fitness world?
The pandemic has changed everything, especially in the fitness industry. I mean, it's changing restaurants, movie theaters, you name it. And before the pandemic, I would never have encouraged anyone to go, say, open a gym, because it's a very different, it's a simple business, but a difficult business. But after the pandemic, it's all changed. And now it's possible, I think it's like Back to the Future. Suddenly, the smaller hardcore gyms, personal training gyms that were popular back in the early 80s are now working because rents are lower. People are afraid to go to big open spaces. The baby boomers are not coming back in quantity. So the whole fitness industry is different. I just came back from a 2-week trip to L.A. where I toured 64 gyms. And I was shocked at what I saw. It was such a throwback to the past. And, many of them are just buying themselves a living or buying themselves a job, but some are going to make it. So in terms of traditional gyms, that's all changing. I personally am working on a gym using technology to that would be more acceptable or friendly or familiar to millennials and Gen Z. So I would use technology. Like in the past year, 4 companies have come out with AI assisted personal training with equipment. So there's all sorts of things that are happening in technology that could really affect and create a better gym experience for the 80% of Americans that don't know what to do when they go into a gym. You're different. You are more like the guys in the 80s or early 90s. But people like you don't exist in any great number right now.
Well, listen, I mean, that's obvious. I mean, if you're looking right now, I mean, of course, there's only one me. Someone said that to me earlier. There's only one me. All right, let's get into some cool stuff. I know you have a ton of time. Okay, John Cena wrote the forward to your book. You mentioned, some of your house guests. Before we get into the John Cena story, tell us about some of the people that have literally, you had to stay at your home and their impact on the world and kind of who they are. So I know there's been a bunch of like celebrities, not just fitness celebrities, but actual, movie stars and things that have stayed with you. Tell us, give us some of the stories that are in the book, or maybe some of the stuff that's not in the book, and maybe the stuff, I don't know, maybe stuff that you haven't told. I want to hear some of these stories.
Well, I guess I had a gift for seeing potential in people. Maybe it was my architectural background, but I could see, like when I saw John Cena at Gold's Gym, he was out in spring break. He looked like Matt Damon or Mark Wahlberg, who had just been in our gym. But he was a big guy. He had big arms. And I just said, have you ever thought about pro wrestling? And he said it would be his dream. And he said, but I could never make that happen. I said, well, I could help you. And 18 months later, he had a contract. Back then, pro wrestling was a big deal. Vince McMahon tried to buy Gold's Gym at one point, and I said, I have a problem with a lot of your talent. They don't have the right physique for what they're doing on stage. And so he said, well, send me people. So I sent him over 20 people in the following years, and many of them became some of their best wrestlers, the most well known. So,
all right, give me some. Let's hear some names. Like,
Ultimate Warrior,
yeah.
Kurt Angle, Randy Orton, John Cena. We talked about Chris Masters, the Masterpiece. These were people who were, tall or big or had a great look. One of them, Evan Marriott, was 6'5", and he had a great look. So while he was staying in my house going to wrestling school, I said, why don't you try out for some auditions for a TV series or whatever? He became Joe Millionaire. He was the first what do you call it? Reality TV star. 43 million people saw his last episode.
Right.
I watched it in the bedroom where he had stayed for 2 years. But during that series, they were talking about him as this unemployed contractor, and instead he's staying in a multi-million-dollar beach home. So there were people like him, Jay Cutler, who was Mr. Olympia. I met at 19, like Lee Priest. I met him at 20. Lee went on to be, and is still a great bodybuilder at age 50. So I would help people, because the big challenge for a lot of Americans is being able to move and get out of their space. Only 1 in 10 Americans ever lives outside a 100-mile radius of where they were born. That's how captive they are to their own environment. So people would come to L.A., but back then, I mean, for most of my house guests, it was their first time on a plane. They had never traveled anywhere. You could be intimidating. And L.A. was not as expensive as it is now, but it would cost a few $1,000s to relocate and get settled. So the time in my home would give them the break to start a new life in California, which really LA back then, and maybe even now a little bit, is still a land of incredible opportunity. I got my first job as an architect designing the Neiman Marcus store in Beverly Hills at age 30. That would not have happened in any other city in the world. 30 years old, I'm given a $16 million budget to design a store for Neiman Marcus on Wilshire Boulevard in Beverly Hills.
You're, as we would say out here in Boston, wicked smart, Ed. Before I let you go, Arnold Schwarzenegger, you have a relationship with him. You've had a relationship with him. What's that like? What was that like, obviously, I guess it's almost probably similar to the trajectory of John Cena, but, tell us about your relationship, when you met him, how often do you interact with him? And, just kind of like, what's that like? Because, he's as big as it gets.
Yeah, he is. I mean, I met him during the time they were filming Pumping Iron, and I had seen pictures of him in the magazines, and I came up to him and I said, what do you want to do? And he said, I want to be rich, I want to marry well, and I want to be famous. And I didn't doubt him for 1 minute. And if you had told me he was going to be governor of California, I could say, yeah, I can believe that. I could see that. So I would see him. I would take my house guests who were Catholic to church every Sunday at the 9:30 Mass at St. Monica's, knowing that he would be there with Maria and the kids. And he would be very gracious in spending time with the guys or gals and telling them how great they looked and signing autographs or taking pictures. So he's just a class act. I mean, he's in another world I can't really relate to, but he is. I love the fact he hasn't forgotten his roots. He credits bodybuilding with his success, and if you were to walk into a room and you didn't know who he was, you would know that was somebody that had a certain charisma. I remember seeing Ted Kennedy walk into a room in L.A. and you knew he was someone. Someone different, someone special. And Arnold has that look now, and he's training in Gold's Gym a lot these days with his son Joe, the kid he had with his housekeeper. So it's wonderful to see that. He's really kept Gold's Gym alive because Google owns the building now, and they want to make it all part of their Venice campus. But Arnold, I think, has kept them at bay. Mm-hmm. So Gold's Gym owes a lot to Arnold.
Well, Ed, again, your history is remarkable. There's a lot to cover. I know we didn't have a ton of time with you, but I just think it's really interesting what you've done and what you continue to do and continue to change this industry. Did you say you're 78? Is that what you said? 78 years old. This guy's, he's traveling all over the place. He's at all these events, and everybody knows who he is. Everybody that I know, I'm not even talking about famous guys. They know who Ed Connors is for a reason, because of his impact on the fitness world, not just bodybuilding. But so if you're working out, if you're training, if you want to look good, if you're an Instagram model, you have Ed Connors to thank for whatever food you're putting in your belly, whatever money you're putting in your bank account. This guy literally was there at the very, very beginning and has created it and continues to help impact that industry, and he's revolutionizing it as we speak. If you'd like some more information about Ed, go to edconnors.com, pick up the book. Again, it's an interesting story about history within this space, but it's not even just about the history of it and the characters in between, but it's also about building a brand. You know, as a marketer myself and a business person, I'm always interested in people like Ed that have done huge things, continue to do things. And by the way, we can talk about it, but you know, it hasn't been easy. You know, there's been a lot of ups and downs and peaks and valleys. This guy's taken a lot of risks. He's taken a lot of hits, but he's also done a lot of great things as well. And he continues to do it. And he's been gracious enough to spend some time with us. Ed, thank you so much for being here. My name is Mike Alden. That's Ed Connors, and we'll see you soon.
I'm super excited about our latest program. Look, we've been on television for close to 20 years, literally selling hundreds of millions of dollars with products and services that have had a positive impact on people's lives. We've created millionaires. If you've ever watched television, you've most likely seen me on television, not dressed like this, but in a suit and a tie. Listen, we've re-engineered the process. We're allowing people, a small group of people, whether you're an author, whether you're a business coach, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you have a program or a service that you feel as though that can have a positive impact on people's lives, and you want to up-level your game. You know, you're tired of what's going on social media. You're tired of AI is not kicking in. You're tired of all the money that you spent and you're not seeing any return. You're tired of all these fraudsters out there that tell you they're going to put you in Huffington Post or USA Today or Forbes, and it's nothing just but a joke. You want to be in front of millions of people every single day all over the country. Folks, we've been doing it for 20 years. We've re-engineered the process. We've made it possible for the average everyday person to participate in this. If you want to up-level your game, if you truly want to build your profile, if you truly want to get in front of millions of people every single day, send me a direct message at Mike Alden. See it on the bottom of the screen. At Mike Alden, put TV in the message, and I will get back to you personally and see if you're a good fit for us. Again, send me a direct message at Mike Alden. Send me the message, TV, and we'll see if you're a good fit.